What's going on, everybody? It is TripleCrown24 back today with a new card show recap video. You'll see my Salem card show recap today and then my Plainfield one tomorrow. Two shows again this weekend. This time around, I was set up. Didn't have my full setup. I only had one table at each show, so no value boxes coming along with me. But I did still get to take along my showcases and then my team pack boxes. Overall, a very successful weekend, especially sales wise on Saturday. And that was the show that I did in Salem, Indiana. To tell you about this show, it's a smaller show. Let me just put it that way. It's at a fairground, and fairground shows, it's kind of the size depends on what building in the fairground you get. There are some that are these really massive type buildings that are there. And then you get some that are more like garage style, like a large garage or trying to think of like some kind of small attraction building area. And this was more on the latter side than the former side. But I got to tell you, there were some pretty big name dealers that I know, at least big name within our little area where I'm from, that were set up there, and there was a lot of really solid foot traffic. So it was a fantastic show. I had no idea what to expect heading into this show. I'm very glad that I went. Let me tell you. So let me show you what I picked up. A lot of it was selling, I will say. So there's not going to be too much here to talk about, but I do have two cards to show you, and they both came via trade. The first one here was this Walter Payton rookie. It's pretty well centered to the corners, leave a little bit to be desired, but when you have an assigned grade of a 4, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some reason that it's a 4. But overall, pretty solid centering on this one. Just a good example of it. I traded away my Larry Bird autograph that I had picked up last weekend. And, that card was, I didn't really want to give it up. I did like it a lot. And Bird is a fairly easy sale for me. I can move his stuff pretty quickly, but you can't go wrong with the classics. And I always have loved the Walter Payton rookie. I've owned several of them before, so this was a good example. I wanted to go ahead and get it. So I was glad to work out that trade. It was a gentleman that I made several deals with over the weekend. You'll see one more trade that we did in my Sunday recap tomorrow. Here's the other card, and this became one of the top 3 most asked about cards at the Plainfield show the following day. As soon as I acquired it, people were all over this thing. And I made a trade that was I gave up one of my LeBron cards, just a random LeBron optic slab, some cash, and my Dwayne Wade gold refractor, which that was the one I picked up at the National, my final pickup at the show. And I love that card a lot. It went to someone who loves it more than I do, which is it definitely helped in parting with it in a trade. And the card I got back is something that I normally would not pick up in exchange for something like that gold refractor, but I just felt like I could get the number I wanted for this card much easier than I could the Wade gold refractor. That's just the nature of the business. Sometimes I can't always take the things that I personally like the most because I have to cater to what the audience or my customer base demands. And therefore, I picked up a Justin Herbert RPA out of Select. This is actually the white prism. Kind of looks like a silver, depending on how you look at it, but it is the white, which is numbered out of 35. It is 19 of 35. And there's nothing that really jumps out about this card. I mean, you have the one color swatch here. It looks like there's like maybe a little bit of piece of some kind of patch material that's coming in, but it's just, other than that, just the classic Charger blue swatch. His autograph on this one, I had a guy tell me at the Plainfield show that the autograph looked kind of thin and it didn't really look that good on this card. I would beg to differ. I think this is a pretty decent autograph. I've seen a lot of Herbert autographs. His signature is pretty consistent and usually pretty clean. He's not as streaky as someone like Mac Jones is. And like Joe Burrow's B sometimes kind of looks a little bit weird, but Herbert, I can't remember a bad Herbert autograph that I've ever seen, and he's done a lot of signings too. And there's never been one where I've said like, "Oh, that looks ugly." So I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think, but to me, it looks fine. So that was those were the two pickups. Let me just lay them out here. So let's go ahead and talk about what was on the show floor. And the diversity at this show was not as great as I had seen in some of the previous shows. It kind of resembles more so what I've come to expect, where there wasn't as much like UFC, wrestling, hockey, soccer, those kind of those sports that have very strong followings at certain shows, and sometimes they are just completely absent. And in this case, they were for the most part pretty absent at this show. Uh, from my observation, I did have people asking for some of those cards. I had a couple guys asking for soccer, a couple guys asking for UFC, a couple guys asking for wrestling. So there is interest there, but in terms of what the dealers had, there wasn't much of that there. It was largely football based. There was a lot of football. I actually had people who came up to my table and said, "Oh, so you're mostly a baseball guy?" And usually it's like, "Oh, so you're mostly baseball?" Kind of like, "Oh, it's a good thing I'm looking for baseball." Whereas usually people are looking for other sports, and I'm primarily baseball. Although I do try to diversify what I have to the best of my ability, but yeah, I am biased towards baseball. It's my favorite sport. So naturally, I do usually carry more baseball cards than any other sport. But outside of that, it was there were a lot of really nice cards there, and then there's a lot of like value box cards. And in terms of what was in between, I didn't feel like there was all that much. There was some, but it was kind of on those two ends of the spectrum from what I could see. Let me tell you about what people were asking for. When I was in this market, I was kind of thinking, okay, what is going to be kind of the hometown team, because this show is probably like 30 to 45 minutes outside of Louisville. So if you think about the Louisville market, and when I've done shows there in the past, I usually tell you that there's some Cincinnati, some Indianapolis, maybe some people from like Atlanta fandoms that kind of merge in. For this one, a little bit more north, definitely not as much Atlanta fans. I saw some like Braves guys there, but a lot of interest in the Cincinnati teams, a lot of interest in the Indianapolis teams, on top of the big time stars as well. The names that we all know are hot right now, especially on the side of things with football. The quarterbacks were still incredibly hot. The one that I was most asked about once again was Tua. Does surprise me a little bit. Um, and a lot of people were actually looking for base rookies at this show. And I see a lot of posts on social media in various places when people are searching for something and they clearly say, like, no base, no base, no base. I very rarely see people who are specifically looking for base. So that was definitely a change of pace. And I'm not sure exactly what their motivation was behind that, but they were definitely, from my perception, looking to buy those in quantity. So interesting, to say the least, because that's definitely different from what I've been seeing lately. What wasn't so hot? There wasn't as much wax at this show as there has been at the past few. This is more like of a normal amount of wax compared to what I normally see. But I didn't see too many people going in through the value boxes, and there were a good number of people who had value boxes. I briefly thumbed through them, and for the most part, they were pretty solid. Nothing that I was able to really just say, like, okay, I'm going to stand here for 10 minutes and see if I can dig anything out. It was more so just kind of taking notes and mental notes for myself and seeing what people had. But the value boxes that I saw were, there was value in the value boxes. I should put it that way. But there wasn't a lot of people who were taking the time to kind of dig through them, which I thought that's been a little bit different lately too, because I've been seeing a lot of people kind of pulling up a chair and setting up shop at some of these value boxes. That was not the case this weekend. The people who were there to spend, going after some, I wouldn't say, your comic cards, but cards that were $20, $40, $100, a couple $100. That's what a lot of people were going after, and that's typically what I see at a lot of shows where people aren't going into those value boxes. So I always wrap up the show with my takeaways. I do something I liked, something I didn't like, and then I read, and on a positive note with something I liked. Let me tell you something I liked right away. I worked with the promoter Brad to last minute get a table. How it worked out was that I saw the flyer on Facebook for a few different shows, and I wanted to kind of schedule a Saturday show to pair with the Plainfield show that I'll do my recap for tomorrow. And I texted Brad from the flyer, and sometimes it's hit or miss with these texts. Like you get promoters who will like text you back a week later, and they'll tell you like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I had a table available." Like, oh well, okay then. Sometimes they're like instant. They're like, "Yep, how much you want?" All this information. And Brad, he was right on it. He texted me back probably within 5 minutes. He had told me, like all the information again on the flyer so that I had it all on one place, and told me all the other information about what was going on and all that. And I was blown away by just, it was a good sign, I guess I should say, where uh, I had a feeling that this was going to be a good show as soon as I got that message from him. I came in right away. When I walked in the door, he greeted me. He showed me right where my table was, walked me to my table, uh, you know, asked if I needed help setting up. He bought donuts for all of the dealers at the start of the show, uh, and had a little. I think it was his daughter had like a little snack thing where they had like little snacks that you could purchase as their own little snack bar, or you could bring your own. And then he had drinks as well. He was giving out water bottles to the dealers. He was walking around, like, hey, do you need water? You got a water bottle, make sure you stay hydrated, all that. And then he was kind enough to order pizza for all of the dealers as well. Keep in mind the tables at this show were $15, and if you've never set up at a show before, typically like 30 to 40 is what is average for a 8-foot table in my area for a show. He was charging $15 a table, and on top of that, he was paying. He has to pay for the venue and all that, and then he was paying out of pocket to get this pizza and these donuts and all these snacks and all this water for people. He was, there was a time where I was kind of standing there, and he's like, "I know that it's tough to do it on your own, man. If you want to go get like pizza or something, you can go. I can watch your table for you if you're good with that." And I told him like, I'm good for now, but I really appreciate it. Just I've worked with a lot of promoters, and I got to say, like 9 out of 10 times, the promoters are fantastic. I love, doing business with them or setting up at their shows and trying to be uh, a good representative at their shows. And Brad, the way that he did it, he didn't have to give everyone food and all that, but I just have to give him tremendous props. Just the way that he carries himself and the way that he goes about things. Like that's a guy where I will go out of my way to go set up at his show because he treats everybody right, man. And that's it. There's a lot of great, like I said, there's a lot of great dealers out there. This isn't a knock on anyone, or excuse me, a lot of great promoters out there. This isn't a knock on any given promoter. Um, but it was just an exceptional experience. So I wanted to make sure I raved about his show here. And if you're in the Salem area or you're nearby, I highly recommend coming out to the show. So I'm gonna go to something that I didn't like. I saw this a couple of times, and I have quite the tirade, or well, maybe that's a little too harsh to say, but I have a lot to talk about in the Plainfield recap tomorrow with my ever growing battle with the comp police out there. And I had a couple of people ask, not only me, but a few other dealers, like, do you know what the recent comps are on this card? And I was thinking to myself, like, I might. I do look at that stuff and do consider it when I am pricing something out. But with with how many cards I have to constantly know like what they are is it would be difficult to keep up with. And the way that I do things, I don't raise my prices based on what the market says. How I do it is that I start high based on what I have into the card and I keep going down until someone buys it. So I cannot remember the last time that I actively increased the price of a card that I had. It's something that I don't do. And if the market sways and all of a sudden my price becomes a good deal, that's fine because I got what I needed to for the card. That's more so what I'm concerned with rather than trying to milk my customers for every single dollar possible. Uh, so I get that that's something that is different, and a lot of dealers, they do pay very close attention to it, but that's not how I do it. Um, but to me, I just feel that if you're really concerned about your comps, then just look them up because most of the time, even when I do tell people like what it is, 9 times out of 10, they don't take my word for it. They still go out and look at it. So, I mean, let's just save the steps here, and you're gonna look it up anyways. So it is what it is. But I just wanted to put that out there because I kind of chuckle about it, but it's something that I scratch my head at sometimes. Anyways, let's go ahead and end on a positive note here with something that I liked to wrap up the show is that I saw other promoters there. There's actually two promoters, including Jeff, who does the Midwest Monster. And I kind of talked to him about the show because I didn't get a chance to speak to him at the actual Monster. And I mean, rightfully so. He was he was a very busy man that weekend, but I just wanted to tell him that he was doing a good job with it. And it's cool to talk with the other promoters and also some other dealers that I had known from there. And it's cool to see them going out to other shows where they can kind of self promote themselves. And from what I could see, Brad was perfectly okay with that. And I've been seeing it more and more lately where people are they're building a community within the show promoters. I think that is key because there's a couple of shows here that are coming up a week from this Sunday that are on. It's week 1 of the NFL. The Bengals are at home, and there's 2 shows here in Cincinnati. Uh, and that kind of concerns me a little bit that foot traffic might be kind of slow at those shows because of the game and because they're pretty close to each other. So I definitely think it's important when the promoters can kind of work with each other to make sure that there's different dates so that it doesn't draw customers from the same pool of people, if that makes sense. So just the little tight knit community that was kind of in play at this show was something that I thought was neat. So that wraps it up for me today. Let me know what you thought about the Salem card show for August 27th, last Saturday, 2022. And I'll be back tomorrow with my Plainfield show recap. Take care, stay safe, be kind.